So how is pain, the payment for pain assessed? So the Mishnah said, the Beis Din evaluates how much money a person... Yeah,
want this? Or stop?
That's sort of big it. Yeah, the Beis Din evaluates how much money a person, let's say with a similar threshold for pain as a victim is willing to take in order to make this for in this way. That's how we evaluate and how much the person is going to pay for it, how much you have to give. Now, so the one who burned the victim, as we said, has to pay this amount. So how do we appraise pain in a case where the injured party also suffered personal injury? So Amar Avodah Shmuel, Shmuel's father says, the Beis Din evaluates how much money a person is willing to take to allow someone to cut off his hand. So the Gemara says, do you really mean to cut off his hands? So, if wouldn't this evaluation, now, first of all, wouldn't this evaluation be not just for pain, but also include all five types of damages? And furthermore, are we dealing with fools who would accept money to cut off their hands? What does it mean, l'kteya? So the Gemara says, rather, the Beis Din evaluates how much money a person would accept to allow someone to cut off his already severed hand. So he has a hand which doesn't work. So how much would he pay to cut it off? So the Gemara says, so in the case of the hand, also there's no pain alone, but there's also pain and you have beishus, you have humiliation. Why? Because it's an embarrassment for him, for someone, or to take part of his flesh to throw it to the dogs. So the Gemara says, rather, the Beis Din evaluates how much a person is willing to allow someone to cut off his hand, which already the government was condemned by a written decree by the government to be cut off. So now you're paying how much to change the decree from having it means by a drug, which is not accomplished by pain, to having it by a sword, which is accompanied by pain. So the amount of money he would accept, he knows Nebuchadnezzar's hand is going to be cut off anyway. That's what was the decree. But how much are you willing to pay, let's say, not with the drug, with the drug or without a drug? And the amount of money he would accept to have his hands cut by a sword instead of by this drug, that is his compensation. So Amri, the Chacham say, Nami le shokel misar nafshe. Here too, one will not take money and cause himself pain this way. So there's really no way to evaluate. Elo, kam adam reitz little lekteya le yodei hamufuteves the malchus being sayim l'sam. Rather, the Beis Din evaluates how much a person would give to have someone cut his hand, which is already, as we said, condemned by the government to be cut off, and changing the decree from having it been cut off by means of a sword, which has pain, to having it been cut off by means of a drug, the opposite, which is not accompanied by pain. So now the Gemara says, "Hi litel." So in the case, then this wording to take should have said litel mibayli. It should have said, instead of saying to take, it should have said to give. How much a person would give money? So I'm like, oh no, but Yeshua litel zeh mizeh mashdas zeh. In other words, he says the Mishnah means the Beis Din evaluates how much this one, the injured party, will take from that one, the one who caused the injury, based on what this man, the injured party, would have given to the government to have his hand cut by a drug rather than by a sword. Now the Mishnah taught, Ripoi, how is the payment of medical costs assessed? So if a person struck another person, then he's liable to heal him by paying for his medical costs. If growths appeared on the injured area due to the injury, this is, we have this already, this Bryce starting. So now, if growths appeared on the injured area due to the injury, and then the wound reopened. So then the one who caused injury is chayav to heal him again by covering his medical costs. and Mechayiv Litalay Dmei Shifted. He's chayiv to give him the value of his loss of livelihood, which he recovers while he recovers from the reopened wound. Now, if the growths that appeared are not due to the injury, so then he's not liable to heal him by covering the medical cost. He's not chayiv to give him the value of the loss of livelihood. Bryson continues, Rabbi Yehuda says, even if the growths appear due to the injury, he is chayiv to heal him by covering the medical cost, but he's not chayiv to give him the value of the loss of livelihood. The Chacham say the one who caused the injury is not chayiv at all, because the Teda says the halacha of compensation for shiftei or refuasei. Teda says his loss of livelihood and his medical costs together. Anyone who's chayiv to pay compensation for loss of livelihood, then chayiv b'ripa is chayiv to pay for medical costs. And if one is not liable to pay compensation for loss of livelihood, then chayiv b'ripa is not chayiv to pay for medical costs. So the Gemara asks, but what do they disagree? Rabba says, I found the Chacham in the study of Rab. When they were sitting and were stating the explanation, and they said, and they said here, the Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim disagree. Here, the Rabbi Yehuda and the Chacham disagree about whether a wound may be wrapped in a bandage. In other words, when one is permitted, whether one is permitted to bandage his wound to lessen his pain, at the risk of causing damage side effects. Rabbanan Sabri, the Chachamim hold, in other words, the first Tana of the Brisa holds, Maka Nitna Le'eged. They hold that a wound may be wrapped in a bandage. So if the bandage causes side effects, which lead the injured party to incur additional medical expenses, those expenses are considered to have resulted from the original injury. Rabbi Yehuda holds that no, Maka Nitna Le'eged, that a wound may not be wrapped in a bandage. Therefore, Ripoi, with regard to the medical cost, the Tana B'Kra, which the Torah repeated, the obligation to pay, Torah says, so Mechayiv. So then one who caused the injury is chayiv to pay compensation. But for loss of livelihood, the Tana B'Kra, which the Torah did not repeat the obligation to pay, Mechayiv is not, then the one who caused the injury is not chayiv to pay compensation. Rabbah says, I know, and I said to them that if Rabbi Yehuda were to hold that a wound may not be wrapped in a bandage, then the one who caused the injury should not be chayiv to pay compensation for medical costs, as he's not chayiv to because then it will have side effects. If you say makil nikar leg, which means that by you wrapping it to sever the pain now, that might cause side effects. So why should I be chayiv? If you wouldn't have wrapped it, then nothing would have happened. So that's what Takar B'Yudah says. So then Ripa should also not be chayiv. Hello, rather the Pula everybody agrees that a wound may be wrapped in a bandage. However, but not be wrapped in an excessive bandage. And explains like this. Rabbi Yehuda holds Kivan since a wound may not be wrapped with this excessive bandage. So then, with regards to the medical costs, which the Torah repeated and said, so Mechayiv, the one who caused the injury, is chayiv to pay for compensation. However, Shebes, in regards to livelihood, the Leitana B'Kro, which the Pasuk did not repeat the obligation to pay, Mechayiv, then the one who caused the injury is not chayiv to pay for compensation. Rabbanan Sabri and the Chacham hold, in other words, the first time of the Brisa, the Tana B'Kro B'Dipay, since the Torah repeated the obligation to pay compensation for medical costs, Asher was not Mechayiv, one is chayiv to pay compensation for loss of livelihood. The Takish L'Ripay, which is next to the obligation of medical costs, and therefore is chayiv to pay for. Now, Rabbi Yehuda holds Shebes Mechayiv, even though medical costs and loss of livelihood are next to each other, the one who caused the injury is not chayiv to pay for the loss of livelihood. In this case, the Midrash Rachmon Arak, because the Torah only says only Arak, only here, not other things. But Rabbanan and the Chacham hold Rak the Shalei Makmas HaMakudasam. The Chacham hold that one must pay for loss of livelihood. In this case as well, holds that only is coming to exclude growth that were not due to the injury. In other words, with regard to which one who caused the injury is putter from liability. So the Gemara asks, And according to the later Chachamim in the Brisa, the Amri who say, anyone is chayav to pay compensation for loss of livelihood, is chayav to pay ripui medical costs, and the whole chayav b'shevis. And anyone who's not chayav to pay for compensation of loss of livelihood, any chayav b'ripui is not chayav to pay for compensation of medical costs. So ripui the Tanah Beikra Lamali. Why do I need the pasuk repeated the obligation of medical costs? So the Gemara says, "By the Tanah Beit Rabbi Shmuel, the Tanah it's a Beit Rabbi Shmuel, Eimer, Berapi Yirapi." The Torah says a double expression, Berapi Yirapi. Mikash Nitan the Shus the Reifel Rapi. If anything from here, the permission is granted. The Rebbe quoted this Gemara many times. The permission to be granted to a doctor to heal, and it's not considered to be intervention counter to the will of Hashem. In other words, the Eibishter wants. Can't say the Eibishter help me, Eibishter help me. The Eibishter wants that the Yishabarapi Yirapi. Mikash Nitan the Shus the Reifel Rapis. The Brisa benign shim all bit to make magmas and magma this ram makle chayav the Brisa bechayav the delay shift. From where do we know? Growths appear due to the injury and the wound reopen. So the one who caused the injury is chayav to pay is to heal him by covering the medical cost. It's chayav to give him the value of the loss of livelihood while he recovers from the reopened wound. That's what the Torah says. Rak shift the yite v'rapi yirapi. Torah says, and he shall cause him to be thoroughly healed. V'rapi yirapi. So you would think that what about if growths that were not due to the injury is also chayiv? That's what the Torah says only. In other words, this only excludes this case. This is in accordance with the opinion of the first Tana and the previous Brisa. That even if growths appear due to the injury, he's still going to be potter. Why? Because the Torah says rak. That those who say that Yehuda says. Even if growths appear to the injury, due to the injury, the one who caused the injury is completely exempt from paying compensation, both for medical costs and loss of livelihood. And this is according to the opinion of the later Chachamim in the previous Brisa. And those who say that Rabbi Yehuda says, even if growths appear due to the injury, the one who caused the injury is potter, mishebes, he's potter from compensation of loss of livelihood. And is a chayiv to pay for medical costs man, according to whose opinion is this? In according to the opinion of his father Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Mar. So now the Gemara analyzes the statement of the Brisa. Amar Mar. You would think that the halacha that even if growths that were not due to the injuries, chayiv tam leimer rak. That's what the Torah says. Only shall pay for his loss of livelihood to teach that he's a potter in this case. So is there a need for the bus to teach that he's potter in the case of growths that are not due to the injury? So Amri, the Chacham say, what did the Brisa mean when it said that the growths were not due to the injury? The Tanya was taught in the Brisa. Now, in the case of a person who violated the doctor's instructions, and he ate honey, or he ate a type of food which the doctor told him not to eat, because of the fact that honey or any type of sweet foods are detrimental to his recovery from the injury, and his injury developed this gargusi, the Gemara doesn't say what that is. So you would think that one who caused the injury should be chayiv to heal him by covering the medical costs. That's what there is only to teach that he's potter this exemption because it was his fault. My gargusi. What is gargusli? Rabaya nasa kirichter. It's necrosis. I know what that is. Maya susa. What is the remedy? To bring like a type of ice plant, wax, and wine dregs. And the Gemara presents several halachot concerning compensation for medical costs. The Amrlei, if the one who caused the injury says to the injured party, "Asyachano, I will heal you myself. I'm a doctor." Amarlei domis alai ka'arya arbo. So the injured party. So again, if the one who caused the injury says, "I'll heal you, I'm a doctor," so the injured party can tell him, "You are to me as like a ka'arya arbo, like a predatory lion, and I fear you, and I don't trust that you're going to heal me properly." The Amarlei, if the one who caused the injury says to the injured party, "My sina asya the magam b'magam." I'll bring a doctor who heals you for no cost, so that I will not need to pay for the medical costs. Amarlei, the injured party, can tell him, "Asya the magan shavi." A doctor who heals for no cost is worth nothing. I don't want it. Now, the Amar,
It's just for a doctor, they try and then they might get.
Yeah.
What?
And if the one who caused the injury says to the injured party, I will bring you a doctor from a distant place. The injured party can say to him, a doctor from a distant place blinds the eye. In other words, a local doctor has an incentive to ensure the patient fully heals. While a doctor from a distant place has no incentive to monitor the patient once he has received his pay. He's going to leave, he doesn't care. If the one, in other words, the injured party says to the one who caused him injury, if the injured party says to the one who caused him the injury, give me money, I will take the responsibility for healing myself. So the one who caused the injury can say to him, I can tell them, you will be negligent with yourself, you will take more from me than was originally necessary. And if the injured party says to the one who caused him the injury, settle a fixed sum for me to recover from medical costs, I'll take care of my own recovery. So the one who caused him the injury can say to him, I will tell him, although more so with the proposal, with this proposal is there a concern that you will be negligent with yourself, as you will wish to profit and you will not spend the money on your recovery. We'll call relaying, and people will then call me an ox that causes damage because I caused an injury which you did not recover. Meanwhile, I gave you the money and you didn't spend it properly. Now, with regard to the compensation for pain or medical costs, loss of livelihood and herbaceous, Tana, the Chacham Tana Brisa, Kulan Mishtameh B'Makin Nezek. And all of these types are paid in the case where the one who caused injury must also pay compensation for damage. From where do we know this? On a Zid, There says a wound for a wound, which to teach us that one who caused injury is tied to give compensation for pain in case of damage. So the Gemara asks, but isn't this necessary to teach an additional halacha? Next Talmud, the Rabbi Shegi Kemezi to include the category of those who strive to pay compensation when one who injures Shegi Kemezit, and Oinis, and one who causes injury intentionally. So first of all, Shegi Kemezit, and Oinis, and one who causes injury due to circumstances beyond his control, Kerotzen, and just as one who injured willingly. The answer is, Taylor should have said, a wound for a wound. My petza tachas potza. Why does it there say a wound for a wound? Tarti conclude from here two things. That the one who caused the injury is chayav to pay compensation regardless of how he caused the injury, even if it was vagus, and he must pay compensation for pain in addition to compensation for damage. Now, with regards to compensation for medical costs in a case where one pays compensation for damage, the Pasuk says, he shall cause him to be healed. Now, why do you say the double expression? To teach us that one who caused the injury strives to give monetary compensation for medical costs in a case of compensating damage. So the Gemara says, you just said that here is given permission for the doctor to heal. And Cain, where it says, they should have said that a doctor shall hear. So learn from here the phrase, employ the one who causes the injury is chayav to give monetary compensation for medical costs in the case of damage. But it's still necessary for the halachas to teach previously. The pasuk to repeat the language of healing, as the Gemara explained. So the Gemara says, that teaches us that one who causes the injury is chayav to give monetary compensation for medical costs in a case of damage. Now, the Brisa says that the compensation for pain, medical costs, loss of livelihood, baishas, and humiliation are paid even when the one who caused the injury pays compensation for damage. So you can learn from here that you find examples of a case where one who causes the injury must pay compensation that are not in the case of damage. So the Gemara says, where do you find the case? Examples of these cases that are not in the case of damage. So the Gemara says like this: Tsar, an example of a case where one pays compensation for pain alone, Hidatani, which the Mishnah teaches. Tsar, how is payment of pain assessed? If he burned another with a skewer or with a hot nail, or Or let's say he burnt, or if he burnt him on a fingernail, which is a place where it does not cause a bruise. In other words, there was no personal injury, only pain. So the Beis Din evaluates the monetary value of the pain. Now, ripoi, in the case where one pays compensation for medical costs, they have a koyev le'midi, where some body parts were hurting, and a solid vice of the samach harifa. Another came and brought him a strong drug, and it whitened his flesh. The tzarech la'isvi le'sama le'anpaite b'gavra de bisro. So the law is that the second person has to give him another drug to restore the color of his flesh, even though he did not cause any damage. He didn't cause the loss of function, but he caused his skin to change color. Now, what's an example where one pays compensation sheves for loss of livelihood? Is the hatke be indrenia, the case where one locked another in a room and forced him to be idle, but did not cause him a personal injury. Baishas, what's the case where one pays compensation for humiliation alone? In the case that rakle ba'pei, somebody who spit in the face of another without causing a personal injury, that's mamash baishas. Sheves. Now the Mishnah says, how is the payment of the loss of livelihood? It says, the Beis Din views the injured party as though he were a watchman of cucumbers. I don't know, but we learned in a Braisa, Sheves, how is payment for loss of livelihood? It says, the Beis Din views the injured party as though he were a watchman of cucumbers. In Taimar, and if you say, Loksa midas hadin, if you say, by the standard of justice was compromised. Why? As when this man will recover, lab agra the shemin shunu l'shapel, he will not collect the wage of a watchman of cucumbers. Ella delay dabler shapel agra, but rather he will carry buckets and collect a higher wage. Inami also b'shlichusei b'shapel agra, he will travel as a shliach and collect an even higher wage. The assessment of loss of livelihood should also account for one of these types of labor. Why are you saying only cucumber? Umar says, Midas hadin le'loksa. The standard of justice was not compromised. Why? That the one who caused the injury already gave him the value of his hand or the value of his leg, and the compensation took into account the professional opportunities he lost due to the injury. Amar Rava says, if one severed the hands of another, he gives him the value of his hand as compensation for damage, Risheves, and for loss of livelihood. The Beis Din views the injured party as though he were a watchman of cucumbers. If one broke the leg of another, he gives him the value of his leg as compensation for the damage. Risheves, loss of livelihood. The Beis Din views the injured party as though he were a watchman at the opening of a courtyard, because he cannot work as a shemer of cucumbers, as that requires walking around the cucumber field. Rabba continues, Simes Yodai, if lower salad. Simes Eina, if one blinded the eye of another, he gives him the value of the eye as compensation for damage. Visheves, and for loss of livelihood, for loss of livelihood, the Beis Din views the injured party as though the one who caused the injury caused him to grind with the milk, because even a blind person can do so. If one deafened another person, he gives him the entire value as compensation for damage, because one lacking the ability to hear is not fit for any form of employment. If one cut the hand of another, and the Beis Din did not evaluate and to determine the compensation, the Beis Din, he broke his leg, and the Beis Din did not evaluate him for the additional injury. He blinded his eye, and the Beis Din did not evaluate the further injury. And then at the end, ultimately he became deaf. So the halacha is mao. What's halacha? Do we say, since the Beis Din did not evaluate him each time, one evaluation is sufficient for the Beis Din to determine his compensation? And the one who caused the injury must give him his entire value at once, as this compensation for deafening him. Or do we say we evaluate each injury by one, and we obligate the one who caused the injury to give a compensation for each? The difference is with regards to whether the one who caused the injury must give him monetary compensation for pain, humiliation for each and every one of the injuries. He that has a although he does not give him monetary compensation for damage, mental loss and loss of livelihood for each and every one of the injuries. Why? The key with the make kula command the katli dami, since he's giving him the entire value of deafening him, he's like someone who killed him, and therefore, and therefore he gives him the entire value and no more. So Tzara Beishis made the call, the Chada B'Chada Yoiv. So,
well, the hunter company each up.
Right. In any event, must he give him compensation of pain and humiliation? So the question is, Tzara Beishis made the Chada B'Chada Yoiv, the Ha'abelit Tzara Beishis. In any event, must he give compensation for pain and humiliation for each and every one other injuries, as the injured party had pain and humiliation each time? And even if you want to say that, since the Beis Din had not evaluated him for each injury, so the one who caused him the injury pays him the entire value altogether, then there's another shayla, if the Beis Din had evaluated after each injury, or the one who caused the injury did not pay the compensation before he deafened him, the question is, what's the halacha? Do we say, since the Beis Din evaluated him, the one who caused him injury is required to give him the compensation for each and every one of the injuries? Or do we say, since the one who caused him injury and not yet paid his compensation before deafening him, he must give him the entire value? So the Gemara says, take it to Shaila. So we go to Chumrah. Rabba asked Shaila, Shevas ha-poichat su b'domim. If a person injured another, causing him loss of livelihood, and that diminishes monetary value. So the question is, what's the law? The question says, what's the circumstance of the case? When she called where he struck him on the hand, and his hand became weakened, so he couldn't work, but his hands will ultimately return to the original health. What's the halacha? Even the Sefer do we say, since he will ultimately return to his original health, he does not need to give him any compensation whatsoever? Or do we say, or do we say, he has diminished his value now? The Gemara says, Tashma, come and learn. If Nebach, somebody strikes his father and mother and did not cause them to have a bruise, and who is therefore not chayav to receive misa, which is the penalty of a person who causes a chabura to his parents, and one who injures another on Yom Kippur, and therefore is chayav for karis, and is not chayav to receive. So the halacha is chayav b'kul, and is chayav to pay all these types. Okay, daf page to pay both. So now the Gemara says, in the case of one who injured his parents, but not bruised, what are the circumstances? It's not the case where he struck him on his hand and he will eventually return to his original health. And if Tani, what do we say? He is chayav to pay all of the 5 nizikim. If so, Rabba's shaila is he has to pay all. Gemara says, no, Amri, when we're dealing with the Ve'er, from my skin, we're talking about where he deafened his parents by hitting him. However, he did not bruise him. Since the father's hearing loss is permanent, he's chayav to pay all 5 types of damages. It's not relevant to Rabba's shaila. A person who deafens his father is executed, even when no bruise is visible. Because it's impossible to deafen to occur without a bruise. So tipsa the domain nafla. It's certain that a drop of blood fell into his ear from the blow, even if you can't visibly see it. And rather, what are we dealing with in a case of ear? Where he shaved his father's hair without causing a bruise. And Gilchel, in a case where he shaved him, the other day, his father's hair will return. I know Bayan, and this is an example of our shaila, of an injury of a limb that will return to its original health. If so, Rabba's shaila is answered. I'm ready to object and say, we're talking about it here. Then with the case where he smears his father with a type of nasha that causes the hair to fall out, the other will not return. Get it. Second.